Warm welcome to today's webinar, Growth Through Open Banking Innovation. We are delighted to have you all here. My name is Navya, and on behalf of Fiorano Software and our partner Inlaks, this is the pleasure to host this session for our valued colleagues and partners across the Nigerian banking sector. Open banking is no longer just a regulatory trend, it is a powerful driver of growth, innovation, and customer centric transformation. Today's session is designed to explore how your institution can harness open banking to unlock new revenue streams, enhance customer experiences, and stay ahead in an increasingly competitive landscape. We have an excellent lineup of speakers today who bring deep expertise across technology, business development, and solution architecture. Allow me to briefly introduce them. We have Mr. Anthony Ayoko, Group Head Product Development at Inlaks, Mr. Rajesh Krishnarao, Vice President Sales and Marketing at Fiorano Software, and Mr. Dandra, Senior Solution Architect Open Banking at Fiorano Software. Here is what we have lined up for the next hour. We will open with the regulatory landscape in Nigeria, then cover what banks and fintechs need to do right now for API compliance, and move into our live platform demo, followed by an open Q&A. We hope today's session sparks meaningful conversations and offers valuable insights you can take back to your teams. And without further ado, let's get started. Over to you, Rajesh.
Hey, thanks, Navya, and a big hello to everyone. It's a pleasure to be interacting with all of you today, and I look forward to having this conversation and a meaningful one, and looking forward to probably a lot of queries at the end of it. Having said that, to kick off this session and to just let you know, we are Fiorano, and then like Navya introduced me, I take care of sales for the global market in Fiorano. And as an organization, we are 30 years old. We started back in 95, and we have close to or little over 600 plus deployments globally. Across verticals, and which includes majority of them in the banking and financial services sector, in various parts of the planet, I should say. And in terms of our own direct presence, we have 10 different offices covering various continents across the globe. As far as what we do or what as an organization we have, we are a product vendor. We are a platform integration and the API management. With these two foundational platforms, we have various solutions and accelerators catering to various challenges the industries face over a period of time or from time to time. So from an open banking standpoint, we have a great journey, which we'll talk a little more as we go along. So we've been working with various banks across the various continents, and in Africa alone, we have more than 25 banks who use Fiorano. So that's the brief, and then we'll talk more in detail as we go along. Let me now hand over to Anthony to talk a little bit about Inlaks, who's been our strategic partner for close to a decade and a half. We've been working along with Inlaks for a long time across the African continent, and let's hear from them. Yay, Anthony, over to you. And Navya, maybe you can go to the next one. Yeah. Yes, Anthony, over to you.
Thank you, Rajesh, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. My name is Anthony Ayoko, and I'm the group head for product development in Inlaks. Inlaks is actually a household name in Nigeria. It was established sometime in 1982, and the organization has metamorphosed over time to become a leading provider of differentiated IT-enabled solutions and infrastructure services across sub-Saharan African region. One thing with us at Inlaks is that we operate through business lines. And like I said, we've metamorphosed and we've established three critical business lines that we operate through. One is the OEM software solutions. We also have the infrastructure software solutions and then our own Inlaks solutions. Okay. The organization has actually grown to over 500 plus employees across 3 regional offices, serving about 8 central banks, over 30 commercial banks, and numerous MFBs and fintechs. Our 3 regional offices, which coincides with our regional spreads also. First one is the West and Central Africa region, managed from Nigeria, and is covering over 10 African countries, both the Anglophone and the Francophone countries. We also have the Atlantic and West Africa region, managed from Ghana, and this is covering about 12 countries. The peculiar nature of our Atlantic and West African region is that it has Anglophone, Francophone, and the Lusophone countries. These are the Portuguese-speaking countries. And then we have the East and Southern African region, managed from Kenya and covering about 11 countries. In all, we have over 33 countries in sub-Saharan Africa that we actually cover with our business efforts. Within the remaining time of my presentation, I'll be explaining what open banking in Nigeria is, what is the current status, what open banking is in a nutshell, business case for Nigerian banks, the key stakeholders, and the compliance obligations before handing over to my colleagues from Fiorano to continue the rest. Nabia, next slide. In terms of current status of open banking, what has been done so far in Nigeria, if you look at the entire African space, the biggest achievement for us in Nigeria in the discussion of open banking is that Nigeria has actually moved further than all the other African countries in terms of establishing a comprehensive open banking framework policy that was established as far back as 2021, and also the operational guidelines and rules in 2023. This prepares guidelines for API standards, documentation, and a centralized implementation model involving an open banking registry and a consent management system. In terms of what we have in Nigeria, we actually using a centralized regulator-led model. The design is, the country's design is done by Central Bank in collaboration with the Open Banking Technology Group. And then NIBS is the key operator for the registry and consent infrastructure, which improve traceability, onboarding, consistency, and then auditability once it goes live. For the current status that we are right now, we've seen that we've completed 5 work streams across governance, regulations, legal and compliance, technical and infrastructure, data security, and stakeholder engagement. This has actually been done, and the reports have been shared with the CBN. We're just awaiting the go live, even though we missed the go live sometime last year. We're hopeful that this year, open banking will actually go live in Nigeria. You know, the model of the central bank-led approach has greatly reduced fragmentation. If you compare it to if the model has been left to individuals, you know, signing bilateral API ecosystems that could have evolved if there is no regulator-led model. And another achievement that I also see is that out of all of these, there has been evolution of 4 data categories that we are going to be working with. Just to touch on them, we have the PIST, we have the MIT, we have the PIFT, and then we have the PAST. Okay, so for the first one, the PIST, we have product information and service touch points. These are non-sensitive public information that you can have access to. The second one, which is the MIT Market Insight Transaction. The first one is a low risk one. The second one is a moderate risk, and it includes statistical information that is aggregated based on product, service, or segments. And it does not include any specific individual customer information. The third one goes to become a high risk one, which is the personal information and financial transaction. This includes customer data, KYC, account balances, and transaction histories, and the rest. And then the last one, which is the plus profile analytics, scoring transaction. These are very high risk and sensitive documents or information about the customer. So this has been what the journey of open banking in Nigeria. And then you've seen that all of these have now been bolstered with our Nigeria Data Protection Act that came upstream just a few years back. So if we move on to the next slide, just to talk about what open banking is in a nutshell, for me, I would say open banking is a framework where banks are required or encouraged, maybe if we go that way, encouraged to share customer financial data with third-party companies. Now, you can move to the next slide. And in sharing of this data, there is a critical thing that is involved in this, which is a customer permission. There must be consent. And this consent will be through secured, standardized APIs. This is where Fiorano will come in all of the conversation. Then we'll get to hear a lot more about this conversation during the deep dive that we're going to have. Who are the stakeholders in this conversation? We have the banks and traditional lenders. These are the API providers because they warehouse customer data. Then we also have the fintech and the third-party providers. The third-party providers are very, very critical in this ecosystem too. They are the consumers of the APIs that will be made available. Then we have the regulators. The CBN, the central bank, are the regulators in this. And then also we have the infrastructure operator in our peculiar case, which is NIPS, which is a very good thing. And then we also have the customers too. The customers own the data and they sit at the point of granting and revoking access, as we'll get to see while we'll deep dive into this. So how will all of this happen and all of the things that are going to happen? This you'll be hearing when Fiorano comes back to speak on it. Why do we have all of this? What is the why for us? First thing is that what customer, there is empowerment for customer, to empower customers with control of data. Customer own data, and they need to control how data is used around all of the conversation that will be happening in open banking. Another thing is that innovation, this is going to drive product innovation to another level that we can't imagine right now. We can only see as far as we can look. But the more we deep dive into this open banking conversation, you find out that opportunities for product innovation is going to accelerate. And we are quite excited from Inlaks' point of view on this. And it's going to also deepen financial inclusion. This has been conversation of central bank over the years. We want to get more people into the financial ecosystem. And it's going to create a competitive market phase for us. So if you look at this open bank, the why for us, and it brings me back to the number portability that we experience in the telecom. This is the data portability for finance. So if you're thinking number portability in telecoms, you look at data portability for finance. It shifts power back to the consumer. So for consumer, you have access to better price products, faster credit decisions, seamless switching. You can decide who you give access of your data to. It's full visibility. For the banks, new API-based revenue, new things to do, deeper customer data for personalized products. And for the economy, like I said, more financial inclusion and all of it. If you move to the next slide, what's the business case for the Nigerian banking, for the Nigerian bank in this open banking discussion? Next slide. One of the things that I'll say, I know most of the audience are bankers. Open banking presents Nigerian banks with both a competitive threat and a significant opportunity. Everything has threats. But what I'm going to say at the end is that the opportunity outweighs the threats. And like I mentioned in the previous slide, revenue opportunities. There are going to be new fee-based services that banks can actually provide to customers. Banks can monetize the data assets by charging fintechs and third-party providers for API access. You create a new revenue stream from infrastructure that you already own. You don't need to recreate it. Like I said again, for product cross-selling, you can aggregate customer financial data with consent, and then you can provide embedded financial services. Take an example. A young man that has gone out to enjoy himself over the weekend, and he wants to go back home and just realize that, oh, I'm low on cash. The banks can actually provide microcredit to the cab hailing, the ride hailing service that the young man can actually do. You can look at it and say, oh, I'm low on credit. Borrow money from my UBA account or any bank account that you currently have that is integrated to that ride hailing system. And then you can actually continue on your journey. And then you pay back once you get reimbursed in your account. So all of these can be well integrated. We see similar things happening with the telcos right now, where you can actually borrow airtime. Once you are low on airtime, you're going to be seeing this spread across several other things. So it's showing that credit will be a major discussion point that we're going to be looking at. It's going to also bring about operational efficiency. Sharing KYC and credit data infrastructure through open banking framework reduces costs of customer onboarding and credit underwriting for banks, because you are just sharing data amongst yourself. And it also creates a very good competitive position for banks. You know, the first movers advantage will be quite good. For regulators, you can actually enforce regulatory alignment and compliance across all of this. So for me, if I want to look at it, the banks that will win won't be those that protect their data the longest. It's those that actually monetize access to it the fastest in this particular use case. So the business case for the bank is that how fast can I monetize access to my data so that I take their advantage. Like I said, the risk of inaction will be greater than the risk of participation. So everybody needs to key in. So the key stakeholders in this entire discussion, you see the banks, CBN, NIBS, FinTech, Open Tech Foundation. Open Tech Foundation have actually done a great work from their advocacy beginning to now taking up, passing on that role to the central bank to be able to drive it through a regulator-led model. It took a long while. If you look at the trajectory of the conversation from 2017 up until 2021 to 2023, and then where we are right now. So for central banks, they are going to enforce the rules, compliance, drive coordination among all of this. NIBS will operate the infrastructure. They will manage the open bank registry as well as the open bank, the consent management system that is also being built. The banks will expose standardized API you look at what is happening now with some of the banks and fintechs that have started doing some things around it. For fintech, a whole lot will be done from there in terms of consuming these APIs that have been available and then providing additional services, value-add services to the consumer. In the end, the consumer gets to enjoy whatever services that is going to come up. Competition is improved, is increased, and then everybody benefits in their way as it is. Next slide. In rounding up my portion of this presentation, we'll look at what are the compliance obligations for banks and fintech. Quite a lot of things that needs to be done. First is that banks are the account holding institutions, in the CBN framework. So majorly what they will just be mandated to do is to declare their intention. Oh, I want to participate in this. They might not necessarily have to register for it. They just have to declare their intention and then they move ahead. For fintech, you have to go through, or any other third-party provider, you have to go through all of these requirements. You have to register with the Open Banking Registry via NIPS. You have to create a KYC or Know Your Partner assessment form. You fill all of that, and then you implement certain requirements. There are quite a lot of them, but just to streamline them, you see some of these things here, and then your API availability as a bank. There are quite some differentiating. If you take the bank and the fintech, what a fintech will need to do, as well as what a bank will need to do, you see that there are quite some differences there, because the banks hold the data and then the fintechs are coming to consume it. You need to have a sandbox as a bank so that the third-party providers will be able to work with you. You host provisionally approved TBP data for them to test, and the TBP will have to go and register with NIPS, get them cleared. And one good thing with all of this conversation is that once a third-party provider is approved by central bank and NIPS, the banks cannot refuse them access to data. So it's an open system. It's just akin to you having a digital public infrastructure where you ensure that things are done in an open and free way so that everybody takes advantage of all of this. So if you look at all the requirements that we've listed there, there's compliance, which is very key. Everybody needs to comply to the standards that have been set up. And once all of this, you tick all of the boxes, then you're ready to jump into the scheme, and then you get participating in the open banking system. So I'd like to stop here at this time so that our partners from Fiorano can continue from there. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Anthony, for that. So once that we have known from Anthony that how the open banking is evolving in Nigeria, let's look at, from a Fiorano standpoint, what's been our open banking journey, what's been our value that we can bring to the banking community in Nigeria. All right, so that's where the focus is in this part of the presentation. And at the end of this, my few slides, we'll have a live demo to be run by my colleague to really show you how the open banking stuff works. As you can see here, we've been in this journey of open banking where it all started, almost about 10 years back in Europe. And we've been what you call they call as a technical service provider. So we've been a TSP since 2018, 2019 in the UK, as per what they call as the OBIE, which is the regulatory entity from the open banking perspective in UK. So we've been registered as a technical service provider, having provided, we comply with the open banking guidelines, and we have been engaging and been an active solution provider for open finance in the UAE market. So, having said this, of course, we have also been a Swift CVPR Plus vendor. So anything on the ISO 222 rail on the transformation side of things as a journey for the banks, we are a de facto vendor to be considered strongly, right? With many banks having utilized our platform to take benefit of this open banking capabilities as well as the ISO 222 capabilities that we bring to the platform, to the table. Right. So let's move on. So in terms of the key things, that bring to the table, to without taking much time away from the demo, is about how the API, what are the guiding principles that one should consider when you talk of an API or open banking API. Yes, they need to be open, the very word it's contained, where it needs to be accessible. So, in the sense, there should be an ability. Can we go back, please? Yeah, it should be modular and it should be modular and provide security and scalability. All right. So, based on these principles, is what we bring our platform as a solution to the table, is what we are proposing in the next slide, as you can see. Now, yeah. It's a no-code platform from us as Fiorano, which will be deployed on-prem, but it is cloud native, so you have the hybrid capability. It's purely an event-driven visual composition platform without any coding, and there is your API gateway and the sandbox, which are the various building blocks one would require from an open banking standpoint. On top of it, yeah, of course, in terms of the OpenID or the FAPI, so we kind of support that, and we'll be happy to have those conversations. This was more to give a generic idea and view of what we can bring to the table. So that's in terms of our readiness. There is a gateway which supports multiple standards, of course, and then you have your O2 and JWT and various other things, which I'll leave the technical specialists to talk more. And then various different core banking integration capabilities. So irrespective of what core banking that you're currently utilizing, Fiorano has the ability to seamlessly integrate and interface with that in a codeless manner, which is one of the biggest challenges in most open banking projects. And then you need to onboard your TPPs. And also there is this whole open finance journey where even banks are starting to think of a journey of becoming a TPP. That's a separate conversation for another day, where things like Bayan can be talked about, and we bring those capabilities as well. But that's for a separate time. But then, of course, there's a sandbox and the developer portal for the API journey. So the API lifecycle management happens entirely within this single platform with minimal to no disruption, as I would say. Yeah. Now let's go to the next one to just give a sense of things for our audience today. That what would it take? End of the day, there is a time to consider, and if you, as you can see, there could be various phases in which to go about the various activities one would require to become completely an open banking compliant financial institution or a bank. And this could happen anywhere between 5 to 6 months. end to end, from the time you start assessing where you are currently, all the way to going live post the certification from CBN, including the OBR registration support that you will require, and things like that. So the entire end-to-end could happen in 4 different phases. And Fiorano, along with Inlaks, is fully committed to the banking community in Nigeria to help you embark on this journey to become open banking compliant. And because, as we saw earlier, when Anthony talked about the potential unbanked market, there's a huge potential for financial inclusion, huge potential for the digital fabric to explode, and open banking is the framework to explode the digital capabilities and the next generation of the future millennial banking, as I personally keep mentioning in the conversations. So this is what it is, and with this kind of insight, let me bring in Dan Rao to the table. Let him show us some of these open banking readiness, starting from the architecture, and then take us through a quick product deep dive, and then yeah, we come back for some questions. Yeah, Dan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Right, so this slide, in essence, basically talks about the various components of Fiorano, which enables a bank to be open banking compliant, right? Of course, it's a full stack, and it's, in fact, this stack, you see, it also includes not just the open banking requirement, as well as the open banking in general to build APIs to be shared with for the B2B type of scenarios as well, right? So primarily we have a API management layer, right, which is at the top, which includes your sandbox developer portal, right? And then which also includes the API gateway layer, right? And that's where all your APIs needs to be. I mean, you basically build policies, right, to ensure those APIs are protected. And those policies changes from country to country based on the type of guidelines put forth by the central bank, right? So what that means is, as a product, we have since been in this for quite some time, we sort of made sure that all those key security features are incorporated into the product and they're up to date, right? Because when you talk about payments, right, and that much more critical, right? It's quite involved from the security standpoint, right? And then, of course, at the bottom layer, we have this whole ability to integrate with the bank's core bank system to get the account details, the balances, transactions, so on, right? And then we also have the whole metering around the usage of the APIs. We have the components of what we call the microservices adapters, which could be used to integrate with the backend system, right? Okay, so I think I'm not going to spend much on this, but I mean the key points are covered anyways, right? So let me show you the product. I think this is when it gets interesting. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so this is our Fiorano CNI platform, right? And this, in fact, when you talk about open banking, right, the key challenge is how you build APIs, right? So if you see, in fact, the list of APIs which are published by the CBN includes, so in fact, I just pulled out the Postman, right? So you have APIs for like to get account details, transactions, KYC details, bill payment, and so on, right? There's quite a exhaustive list of APIs which needs to be implemented. And of course, it's not like every bank has to implement all the APIs based on the type of services they provide to their through their other channels. Only those APIs needs to be implemented, right? So what we do is we go to the bank, we use the CNI platform, the studio, which includes the components to integrate with various back office system, primarily the core banking, right? Here we are talking about ability to integrate using REST APIs or web service APIs, or using third-party messaging servers, right? You can also have like a specific core banking system as well, which can be integrated, right? So we build these flows for each of the APIs, right? For example, the one you see right now is the API which we built as part of the pilot project, as per the CBN specification for get accounts, get balance, and transactions. In fact, once we get past the introduction phase, I'm going to demonstrate an end-to-end working of that flow as well, right? Uh, so yeah, it's more of a drag drop. You configure these flows using drag drop approach. So you're not going to do much of a coding. So what you do is you identify the component from the microservice palette and you configure them. And then there's also an important aspect is the mapping, right? Because the data which is available on your core banking will be of different format, right? But the key requirement for open banking is that you need to follow the spec as published by the, in this case, the CBN, right? So when they say for my accounts, right? So if you go back to this get accounts option, so they have spec'd out that what my response should look like. So if I expand this further, that so basically they said that when you send the get account, it has to be with a certain format, right? So what we do within Fiorano is that we build these mappings as per the specifications, right? And essentially, it's most of the time it gets drag drop. You map the fields, you do put certain rules. So if at all, like primarily, you can have situation where in the datetime format, which coming from the open banking, sorry, from the core banking might not be in this same format what expected by the open banking API specifications. And those transformations are built. Again, we have this funclets inside the mapping itself, right, to do various things around string manipulation, around datetime conversions, right, advanced functions, and so on. So this again is the important aspect of the where you spend a lot of time from the development standpoint to map those fields, right? So in fact, what we have in the left-hand side is the flows which we implemented for other specification. Like for example, we did this for the Open Bank UK. So we have accounts, balances, domestic payments, standing orders, payments, products, transactions, so on, right? So it's all, you need to build these APIs, right, within Fiorano platform itself. So this is on the how you build the API. The other aspect is the API management, right? This again is also very important because when you build these APIs, you need to publish it, right? For you to publish these APIs, you need to use an API management product, right? Wherein you have an option where you can build these APIs from different artifacts. I mean, you can within, of course, within the CBN ecosystem, we will go with the first option. But there are like Open Bank UK or CB UAE, you might have to go with the Open API specification. So there are different flavors in terms of how you implement these APIs, right? And once you have these APIs configured within the API management, you need to go in there and then you need to do what we call the policies, right? This again is something quite important from the security standpoint to ensure that when you publish your APIs, you configure these policies, right? And we are talking about policies where you can mandate that for the API consumer to provide a access token, right? So based on the access token, you will be allowed or denied, right? You also have policies where you can do IP filtering, right? But all that's the requirement, right? And so on, right? And then in fact, the CBN follows the OAuth 2.0, right? So we have all the OAuth 2.0 specific policy where you can create the token endpoint, we can validate the access token, we generate the authorization code flow, and so on, right? And we also have policies where we can do an encryption, decrypt the messages. And again, here coming to CBN, there is a requirement wherein when you set the consent token, right, generated from NIBIS, those has to be encrypted within the header parameters, right? And that's when you can use encrypt message policies. And similarly, we have policies around JWT or JWS purely for payments, wherein if you want to put a payment signature verification, so you can put a JWS, you can use JWS as well, right? JWT is more for token generation, so on, right? We also have policies where you can do the caching, transformation, and so on, right? So that's on the various policies which could be used to secure the APIs, right? And then you have, of course, there's an option where you can build sort of this need to be visible to the API consumer, right? So this is when you can define product and you can assign those APIs to this product, right? So when it comes to the API consumer to see what is that the bank is offering, the entry point would be the developer portal, right? And this is where they can like sign in to say that, okay, I want to see what is that the bank you're offering, what are the different APIs. So I can sign in here and you can browse to the different API products. And then, of course, based on the type of API product you're going to use, you might as well have the complete documentation. But the CBN has a different approach. Most of the documentation, what they are trying to do is they're putting you configuring to Postman, right? So from the documentation standpoint, CBN approach is a little different, right? But then, yeah, that is something Fiorano has as a developer portal, right? So once you have those APIs published, right, as a API consumer, you need to register yourself, right? You need to create an application. At that point, it generates an access, a client ID and client secret key, and using which you can generate an access token, right? Which again is a part of the CBN specification itself, right? Because if you see, they have something called token endpoint, which has to be implemented, right? Like under the authorization, right? So there's something called smart channels and so on. In fact, they also have a Postman version, which is available on the web as well, right? Which is, of course, which is more up to date, right? So if you see here, so they have a get token, right? A refresh token, revoke token. So all these APIs has to be implemented by the bank, right? And all these APIs will be implemented within Fiorano API management product, right? And as you can see, there's a client ID, client secret key. So there's a different grant types. It's all part of the OAuth2 standards, which are part of the API management policies, right? Okay. Right. So now coming to the actual like executing one of the APIs. So what we did is we took a couple of APIs to demonstrate this, right? So let's say what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the get accounts option, right? To make sure that the data actually comes to the flow, we put a breakpoint on this route, right? So what that basically means that when the data comes, you can see that this route should start blinking, right? So let me post one request, get accounts. So now if you go back to the studio, you can see this data is getting into the studio, you send it across, and you go back to the Postman, and you should see the response, right? So similarly, we did for the balances as well. So if I send this request to balance, you get the balance response. Again, for transactions, if you send the request, you get the transaction. And this is as per the specification, right? Okay, I think I'm sort of done. I mean, at least from the demonstration standpoint, it's just a quick overview. So if you can have any queries or, yeah, take it up.
Hey, Dan, thanks for that. That was quick, and hopefully there was value that some of the attendees could quickly grasp out of what's the possible way or how Fiorano can quickly map together based on the standards and keep helping the bank to move forward in their journey. So I think we kind of we're there for some questions that possibly we could take from any of the participants. Maybe you can put it on the chat box, or you could show up your hand and speak up, so whichever way. Or if you want to write to us after this webinar, that's perfectly fine too. We have our partner Inlaks, or who could reach out to you, or some of my colleagues who operate in that region could also be of useful, handy to have a conversation. So with those closing remarks, I kind of open the floor for questions. And yeah, Anthony, would you have any closing remarks while we wait for some of the participants to gather questions?
All right. Thank you very much, Rajesh. For me, in closing, what I would just like to say is to look at the open banking conversation uh, in parallel with the establishment of a digital public infrastructure, which is a very hot topic that has been going on worldwide. You see different climes and countries trying to establish digital public infrastructure. And for us in Nigeria, we know that the open banking conversation fits very well into this the dimensions. If we look at the dimensions of a DPI, first is that there is the talk about universality, like roads or electric grid. Open banking infrastructure should be designed to be available to any licensed participants, no proprietary to any single firm or somebody hijacking it. And I mentioned it during my earlier presentation that a bank cannot refuse a licensed TPP access to its API once that partner is granted access by the central bank. So this the infrastructure is open and is open to all and is mandated to be open. So the layered architecture is also another thing. If you compare open banking with the DPI structure, you have the foundation layer where you talk about identity, payment, data, and exchange, and then you have the middle layer for consent framework, API gateways, like you just explained during the last listing. And then there's the application layer also, which is where the value capture for banks and fintechs will come into play. The services that people will actually use that ride on all of the underlying layered architecture. So open banking replicates this in a very structured way with the API standards and registry that's been created, OAuth, like the solution architect also mentioned. The consent management forms the middleware. So there's a very robust consent management that needs to be built out into this, and then the service layer where the apps for value capture will come in. And one of the things that we all need to look at is that there's going to be a network effect, that will snowball. Once people start seeing the early movers taking advantage, then the others will now start coming and layering on top. So the first movers will always get the advantage. And I hope that most of the participants on the call are getting geared for that. And this is where I will also mention that we are here to partner with you to drive your journey to fulfillment. Whatever support or conversation you need, Inlaks is here to support you with backing from Fiorano to get this off the line. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. While we say that, maybe I will have Dan to step in. We have had some 2 or 3 questions around consistently the how we'll take up or approach consent management and the FAPI. So maybe Dan, you want to step in and to address those questions which have been put on the chat boxes.
Right.
Uh, Typically, the participants were keen to understand few of them in terms of what is our approach towards consent management.
Right. So for the within the CBN landscape, right, the consent management is done by the NIDIS. I mean, in fact, they have been delegated to do the consent management, and they will be having the master copy of the consent. In fact, as a bank, right, when we try to access the customer data, you need to ensure that we first get the consent from the NIPS, right, which is basically hosting the consent management system. And only once the consent is authorized, and the NIPS has basically implemented the whole two-factor authentication, which also includes the BVN for the customer validation. So it's all done by NIPS itself. And once the consent is authorized, at that point, we are allowed to give the data to the API consumer, right? So that's typically how the whole consent management works within the CBN landscape. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Dan, for that quick input. And I hope that's kind of gives indicative response to some of our participants who had asked this question on how do we go about consent management, or how does Fiorano help them with the consent management. I hope there is some inputs given by Dan, which would have as a response would make sense to the participants. And if it hasn't, then maybe Inlaks could take up along with us a much deep dive, separate conversation outside of this webinar. Because as I see, we are 60 seconds over the time, and maybe my partner colleague Precious has something to add to what we have already spoken. Yeah, Precious.
Yeah. Hi, Raji. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, distinguished executives, for joining us on the call. Please, can you hear me? Confirm you can hear me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, distinguished executives, for joining us on the call. We really do appreciate, and we hope the session was truly insightful. So I just wanted to point out that if we have any further questions, we can do well to drop it on the chat box, or you can reach out to us. I will be dropping an email address. If you have further questions, you can reach out. If you need us to do like a deep dive on this as well, we are open, to collaborating with you. So I'm going to be dropping a contact detail here in the chat box. If you have further inquiries, or if you like us for us to further the conversation, or if the session was enlightening for you and you would like for us to further it, you can do it to reach out to us, to myself. I'll be dropping a contact details. And once more, thank you so much for joining us on the call. And we do hope you had so much value while on the call. Thank you. You can proceed, Rashid.
All right. I think that's about it. Thanks, and have a great day. Cheers. Hope to talk to you. Talk to each one of you at some time in your journey of open banking, and good luck to each one of you. Cheers.